According to Norwegian mythology, there were 9 realms in the world. Some realms are well understood, whereas others are entirely unknown. Jotunheim is one of the realms with the most documented history, and it is believed that the land belonged to the frost giants. In addition to being an intriguing location in its own right, it also served as the backdrop for a number of well-known Norse tales. So what exactly was Jotunheim, and why did it play such a vital role in Norse mythology? Jotunheim, land of the giants in Norse mythology. Jotunheim is widely regarded as the abode of giants, particularly the frost giants, the Jotnar and Jotun. It was found adjacent to Asgard and Midgard. Jotunheim is believed to be a world full of magic and sorcery. Further, it was also home to a number of threats to humanity where the gods lived. Despite the fact that Jotunheim had no ruler, a number of significant Norse figures originated there. Loki, the god of trickery, was arguably the most well-known. The river Iving separated Jotunheim from Asgard and served as form of defense. The river never froze and was extremely treacherous to cross. Yet, this did not prevent the Norse gods from journeying into Jotunheim. The tale of Thor and Gerod. The relationship between the Aesir gods and the Jotnar was exceedingly antagonistic. In any myth involving a Jotnar and an Aesir, it is likely that the two have engaged in combat. Thor and Gerod are one of the most well-known in Norse mythology. As with the majority of Norse myths, there are numerous variants, but they generally follow the same structure. So, the story starts from the point when Loki donned a coat of falcon feathers and traveled to Jotunheim using a falcon disguise. He visited Gerod's castle. Gerod, however, was no fool. He saw through Loki's disguise and caged him. Loki was compelled to expose his true identity to the Jotnar as a result of his confinement and hunger. Loki was released by Gerod on the condition that the great Thor is brought to his fortress without his hammer. Loki easily persuaded Thor to visit the castle upon his return to Asgard. He told Thor that 2 beautiful maidens, Yalp and Greep, were awaiting him at the castle. Thor, believing it to be true, left his hammer and went on a journey to the castle. Thor and Loki spent the night in the residence of Grior, an amicable Jotnar. En route to the castle, she forewarned Thor of impending danger and handed him her belt, enchanted staff, and iron gloves. Thor attempted to cross the river Vimur after leaving Grior's dwelling. While Thor was crossing the river, the giantess Yalp attempted to drown him by raising the water level. Thor utilized the magical staff to save his life. However, pissed at the giantess, he hurled a rock in revenge. Thor was assigned a room with 1 chair upon his arrival at the castle. Thor, exhausted from his travels and more than a bit silly, sat in the chair and made the decision to take a nap. Clearly, this was yet another trap. Thor woke up to find himself fast ascending toward the ceiling. The 2 giantesses below him meant to squish him like a bug against the ceiling. Surprised by the circumstances, Thor immediately hurled the staff at the ceiling and pressed with all his strength, crushing the 2 giantesses beneath his throne, thus killing Yalp and Greep. Thor had had enough and confronted Gerod with the intention of fighting. The monster immediately attacked, hurling a ball of molten iron at Thor. Thor captured the iron using gloves that were supplied to him. Thor fired the molten ball directly through the column and into Gerod's brain. Despite Gerod's efforts to hide behind a column, the lost hammer in Jotunheim, Thor is most frequently identified with Mjolnir, his magnificent hammer. It is said that Thor and his hammer were the only effective defense against the Jotnar in Norse mythology. And if Thor ever lost his powerful hammer, it would signal death for the entire realm of Asgard. Consequently, Thor lost his hammer. Thor's angry yells over the loss of his hammer were more than sufficient to attract Loki's attention. Loki quickly realized that he must aid rather than obstruct in such situation. So Loki went to the goddess Freya and sought to borrow her suit of falcon feathers and came up with an idea to pacify the situation. Loki wore an outfit made of feathers to reach Jotunheim. Once he reached there, he spoke with Prim, king of the Jotnar, who quickly acknowledged stealing Thor's hammer. Mjolnir was buried so deeply underground that Thor would never have found his hammer. Loki instantly returned to Asgard to inform the gods about the location of his hammer. The gods had a gathering to devise a strategy for retrieving the hammer without initiating a battle. As without Thor's hammer, the war would have been a lost cause. The Heimdall, the guardian of the Rainbow Bridge Bifrost, devised the only feasible plan. Thor must disguise himself as Freya and meet Prim while posing as a bride. They devised a plan to exchange the hand of Freya for Mjolnir. Prim was so impatient to accept the most beautiful of the goddesses as a wife that he arranged a lavish banquet in her honor. Thor quickly destroyed the ruse by consuming everything present. Prim was surprised to see this act, to which Loki reasoned that Freya was simply hungry because she hadn't eaten for 8 days, owing to her nervousness. Prim, overjoyed by this news, leaned down to kiss Freya, but was scared to see Thor's blazing eyes peering out from beneath the veil. Loki comforted the Jotnar king by explaining that Freya had not slept for 8 nights because of her excitement. Now very delighted, the foolish king ordered Mjolnir to be delivered as Freya's wedding gift. As soon as the hammer was placed in his lap, Thor completely lost his mind and slaughtered every Jotun in sight. Trickeries of Utgard Loki in Jotunheim. Once Thor, Loki, and Thjalfi traveled to Utgard, the capital of Jotunheim. They found Skrymir, a giant who offered to accompany them and carry their food bag. However, after they agreed, he knotted the bag's drawstring so firmly that even the mighty Thor could not untie the strings. This caused Thor to become enraged, and he waited until the giant was asleep before striking him with his hammer to the skull. His initial stroke had no effect, so he continued to strike the giant. Each time, Skrymir merely awoke and made fun of Thor by inquiring if a leaf had fallen on his head while he slept. After becoming bored with his game, the giant abandoned the tree without food and went his own way. The three soon arrived at the fortress of the giant Utgarda Loki. They asked the giant king if they could spend the night and grab some food because they were hungry and exhausted, never missing an opportunity to provoke the Aesir gods. The giant made fun of all three of them. If they sought to remain, he demanded they demonstrate their merits in multiple trials. The first trial consisting of an eating challenge between Loki and Logi, a member of Utgarda's entourage. Although Loki was able to consume all of the food in front of him, Logi prevailed by consuming not just the meat but also the bones and the serving through. The second trial consisted of a foot race. Thjalfi and Hugi, an additional courtier. Again, Team Thor was defeated, with Thjalfi losing 3 consecutive races to Hugi. Eventually, it was Thor's turn, and he chose a drinking competition. Considering his capabilities, he failed. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to drain his drinking horn. Utgarda Loki mocked Thor for being a coward and gave him a second task. Lifting the giant's large grey cat, Thor was unable to move the animal, trying desperately to get the cat's foot off the ground despite his efforts. Thor was given one more job by Utgarda Loki, that he must battle an elderly woman named Ellie. Thor was humiliated when the elderly woman effortlessly defeated Thor. The behemoth allowed the three to spend the night despite their shortcomings. The next morning, Utgarda Loki announced that everything had been a hoax. He had assumed the identity of Skrymir and employed magic to deceive Thor. Every time Thor believed he was striking a sleeping monster, he was actually leveling mountains with his powerful blasts. It was then explained to the trio that the deception persisted within the fortress. Loki was a magical wildfire that consumed the true and its contents. Hugi, on the other hand, had been thought itself, which is impossible to escape. The base of Thor's drinking horn was in the ocean, so regardless of how much he drank, one can never drain the entire ocean. However, even then, Thor had consumed so much alcohol that he dropped the sea level and created the first tides. Ellie was the epitome of old age, a feat that no one can surpass. The fat cat was Jormungandr, the world serpent, a monster so massive that no one had any possibility of lifting it. Thor was angered by Utgarda's trickery. Loki's and rushes to assault him, but the giant and his palace vanished, leaving Thor and his companions to ponder the lesson. The deal between Odin and Mimir. Mimir's well became one of the most significant locations in Jotunheim. Mimir was said to be a wise ancient giant, and it was claimed that he received his knowledge from his well. In Jotunheim, the alleged well was situated beneath one of the great tree, Yggdrasil's roots. Odin, seeking the knowledge, approached the well and requested Mimir for permission to drink from it. Mimir stated that Odin could only do it in exchange for one of his eyes. Odin, yearning for knowledge, quickly accepted and proceeds to remove his eye, which he then gives to the giant. The knowledge Odin sought was crucial to his efforts to delay Ragnarok, the end of the world. Jotunheim is considered one of the most important aspects of Norwegian mythology. What do you think of these mind-blowing tales? Let us know in the comments section.
If you guys enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please consider subscribing to us and hitting the like button. Feel free to leave a comment below and suggest which theory you would like to see next. If you would like to further support this channel, please consider heading to our Patreon found in the description box below and subscribing there. We appreciate your support, and as always, thanks for watching.